You felt your pulse hammering, but kept your face pastoral and confused. You explained that you were new to church administration, that the previous bookkeeper had left things disorganized, that you were still learning nonprofit compliance. They nodded with smiles that didn't reach their eyes, asked if they could look around. You had no legal grounds to refuse without raising suspicion, so you agreed. Showed them the office, the donation records, the bank statements. Everything appeared legitimate on paper because you'd been meticulous. They spent an hour photographing documents, asking questions about specific donors who didn't exist. You provided answers that were technically true but meaningfully false. Finally, they thanked you for your cooperation and left. You waited until their sedan disappeared before allowing yourself to panic. You called Ramon immediately. He arrived within 20 minutes, fury radiating off him like heat. The feds sniffing around meant your operation had somehow pinged their algorithms. Maybe a pattern in the deposits, maybe an informant, maybe just bad luck. Either way, the church was now toxic. Ramon ordered an immediate shutdown. All laundering operations would cease within 48 hours. The building would be sold, the accounts closed, your identity burned. You'd be relocated to a different city with a different cover. Standard protocol when he'd arrived. You should have felt relieved. This nightmare was ending. But you looked around the sanctuary and saw the faces of people who'd started depending on this place. Maria wasn't the only one. You'd been quietly helping others. An elderly man whose pension didn't cover his medications. A single father whose car broke down, costing him his job. A teenager who needed money for college applications. Nothing massive, just small interventions that happened to cost nothing compared to the cash flowing through your operation. Those people weren't part of Ramon's exit strategy. They'd wake up Sunday to find their church abandoned, their priest vanished, their fragile stability shattered again. The thought made you physically ill. That night, you sat alone in the empty sanctuary. Moonlight filtered through the stained glass, painting colored shadows across the pews. You'd been pretending to be a priest for months, but you'd never actually prayed. The irony felt sharp. You didn't believe in God. You believed in numbers, in probability, in the cold mechanics of survival. Prayer was a linguistic performance for the marks. Yet you found yourself speaking into the darkness anyway. Not to God exactly, but to whatever mechanism in the universe determines whether people like you get chances at something better. You told the empty room that you were tired of being what you'd become, that you wanted the exit Ramon was offering, but you wanted it on different terms. You wanted to take the money you'd accumulated and actually help the people who needed it. You wanted to stop pretending to be good and try actually being good. The sanctuary offered no response. Stone and wood don't provide guidance. But sitting there in the silence, you made a decision that would either save you or destroy you. You spent the next day liquidating everything you could access. Not the cartel's money, you weren't suicidal, but your personal cut from months of operations, your emergency reserves, every dollar you'd skimmed legally from the legitimate donations. It totaled just under $40,000. You withdrew it in cash. Then you started making calls. You contacted every person you'd helped, plus a dozen others you'd identified as desperate. You told them the church was closing unexpectedly, but there was emergency assistance available. You set up appointments throughout the day. Each person arrived expecting prayer and sympathy. Instead, you handed them envelopes, amounts calibrated to their specific crises. Enough to matter, not enough to raise questions. You told each of them the money came from an anonymous donor who wanted to help before the church dissolved. You watched their faces transform, disbelief into hope into tears. You were violating every rule of your profession, creating witnesses who could describe you, building a paper trail of goodwill that served no strategic purpose. Ramon would consider it catastrophic operational security, but you'd stopped caring about Ramon's assessments. By evening, the money was gone. Your reserves depleted. You'd just made yourself financially vulnerable for the first time in years, and it felt unexpectedly right. You packed a single bag with essentials, left everything else behind. The FBI would return eventually, and when they did, they'd find an empty building with a